Hello and welcome to lesson 75 of the Learning Guitar series. In this particular lesson we're going to discuss the Super Locrian scale, or also called the altered scale, which is the 7th degree of the melodic minor modes. Let's delve straight into it from the PDFs. So the Super Locrian mode is the 7th mode of melodic minor and presents the following interval: 1, flat 2, flat 3, 3, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. Academically speaking, the scale should be written this way: 1, flat 2, flat 3, flat 4, not third, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. As such, it's basically an Ionian scale, if you think about it, with all its intervals flattened. So an Ionian scale would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and as you can see beside the root note, everything is flattened. But I'd rather you notice the presence in the scale of root third, and that's why I wrote with a 3 instead, even if not totally academically correct, and the dominant 7 here. So 1, 3, flat 7, which makes this scale a candidate for application or dominant 7 chords. Now let's look at some other piece of theory. Here I have an A flat melodic minor, and we know the melodic minor, the interval, so the first degree is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, major 7. If I start from the 7th note of the scale, I have G, A flat, B flat. Here I wrote C flat, but wait, these numbers we don't need. Here I have C flat, because that's how academically you will write it, but as a matter of fact, that note is a B, okay? Then we have D flat, then we have E flat, and then F, and that's the end of the scale. If I look at the intervals now that I generate by starting from G, I have 1, flat 2, I shall write it here, 1, flat 2, B flat is a flat 3 from a G perspective, B is a flat 4, I'm going to write it as a 3, just say flat 4 and 3 is the same note, D flat is a flat 5, E flat is a flat 6, you could call that a sharp 5, by the way, because when we look at dominant 7 chord, we might actually call that a sharp 5. And then F is a flat 7. The vertical structure, obviously, is going to be G, B flat, D flat, F, A flat, B, and E flat. And now if I look at these intervals, I have obviously root note, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. And if I look at it up to here, what I'm looking at is an alpha diminished chord, 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. And in fact, in theory, the 7th mode of melodic minor, Super Locrian, applies to alpha diminished chords. But let's continue. Then A flat is a flat 9, B is a flat 11, but let's look at it as a third for a second, okay? And then E flat is a flat 13. If we think about it in terms of alpha diminished, then, you know, the Super Locrian is pretty much like a Locrian scale and easily applies to alpha diminished chord. We also looked at it when we looked at the Locrian natural 2, 60th degree of melodic minor, last lesson literally. So in a way, if I have, let's say, G alpha diminished, I can use G melodic, G Super Locrian over it. And of course it works, but the fact that there is 1, 3, and flat 7 also tells me that I can apply the same scale to actually a dominant 7 chord. And in fact, the altered scale, or the Super Locrian, is the most common, one of the most common scale used in jazz and fusion when we want to alterate a dominant 7 chord. I'll give you an example. First I'll play you the sound. So here I have a G7, And here is G altered scale. And this kind of sound you're going to notice even more, I mean, if you listen to any jazz or fusion. If I practice it, and that's probably how you should practice too, in a contest of a 5-to-1. Then a 5-to-1, say in the key of C, it will be G7 going into C major. So if I loop this, and I use the melodic minor, so the super Locrian scale, over G7, and then I'm gonna play C Ionian for C, you have this kind of sound. Let's get back to our theory. So, as we've seen, the application over dominant 7 chord is beside its normal application to off diminished chord, given that the scale contains 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. If instead we think of the altered scale as a dominant 7 type of scale, then it applies, as it often happens in jazz and fusion music, to dominant 7 sharp 5, we're talking chords now, 7 flat 9, 7 sharp 9, 7 flat 5, and any other further combination of the mentioned alterations. If you remember, in previous lessons we discussed alterations, and just to quickly sum it up, I mean, if I have a dominant 7 chord, the correct scale, if you want to think of it, would be the Mixolydian scale, and the intervals of Mixolydian scales are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. The moment I introduce notes which are extraneous to that particular scale, we call those alterations. And in this case, the notes that don't belong to Mixolydian will be the flat 9, the sharp 9, the flat 5, sharp 5, and the major 7. If we exclude the major 7 as an interval that generally we reserve to major chords, although as a passing note, you're going to hear it over dominant 7 all the time. But, you're rarely going to find, you're going to come across a dominant 7 chord, a dominant 7, major 7 kind of chord. You'll have, say, dominant 7, sharp 5, dominant 7, flat 5, dominant 7, say, sharp 5, flat 9, dominant 7, sharp 9, sharp 5, and combination of these flats and sharps in terms of alterations. In fact, now if I reloop our progression, but instead of playing G7, straight G7 into C major, I'm going to play different G7 with alterations already included in the chord, and you'll notice how the super Locrian scale will apply even in a more musical way. In fact, if we compare the altered scale to the Mixolydian scale, this becomes even more clear. Here is the interval for Mixolydian, and here are the interval for super Locrian, hence the alterations which I discussed. The modular arpeggio spells 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7, flat 9, of course flat 11, I just wrote it as a 3 again, so you have this clear idea that is 1, 3, flat 7, that's why we play it over dominant. Flat 13. From it we gather that beside the basic half diminished arpeggio, which we already studied, and you might want to look at the Locrian studies. We've done, probably around lesson 35, 36. We can further develop the sound of chords and melodies using flat 9, flat 11, or flat 13 to extend the basic arpeggio. But as you can see, this is a very peculiar scale, which is very versatile. It can be read in different ways because of the presence of both a minor third and a major third. So we have the minor third, but also the major third. Chord-wise, we can envelop half diminished chord, given the vertical structure of this scale. And this can be extended with flat 9, major third, and flat 13. But as super Locrian scales are often used over dominant 7 chords, we should rather focus our attention to the altered dominant 7 chords this scale generates. And this is what you will find in the chord sections of the PDF. What that means that once you go to the chords, down here you'll see there is a lot of dominant 7 chords rather than half diminished chords with sharp 5, flat 9, all sorts of alterations. And obviously you will have it for each, each system shape. So this is shape of D, shape of C, shape of A, and shape of G. Here, in terms of PDF, you have the super Locrian scale on the key of G all across the neck. It's written in G, but you might want to transpose it in all other keys. Here is the arpeggio, in this case an half diminished arpeggio, obviously. And here is the modal arpeggio. So you have here the flat 11, the flat 13, the flat 9. So literally the entire vertical structure. So if you're wondering how you should practice this, well, the best way to practice it is a bit like I just did, is to practice tension resolution. So since all the chords are written in G, so you have a bunch of G7s, altered, you want to practice those and then resolve it into a major chord, in this case a C major, because we're doing a 5-to-1. And in terms of practicing the scale, don't worry too much about what you're playing on C. When it comes to the C chord, try and simply land on a note of the C major 7 arpeggio. And in this case I'm using the shape of A. So the major 7 arpeggio will be this. So in practicing both chords or the actual scale, that's a note of C, that's a note of C, that's a note of C, so you simply want to go back and forth in between G and C, but as I say, for as long as you land on the C chord, don't worry about necessarily about phrasing on the C chord. And in terms of chord changes, instead, when you want to practice the chords, simply move from one to the other, from one to the other. Let's look at more theory that we can extrapolate from this scale. So if we go back to this, we have the vertical structure and the horizontal structure. Let's look at the triads and extended triads now that this scale generates. Let's look first at triads. 1 flat 3 5, so G, this G, B flat, D obviously is G diminished. Let me move this lower a little bit. Here you go. B flat, D flat, F. So B flat and D flat in relation to B flat is a flat 3, and F in relation to B flat is a 5. So 1 flat 3 5, this is B flat minor. That's already interesting because it's like, okay, I get this part of the arpeggio, and if you think in terms of over dominant 7 chord, now the flat 3 becomes a sharp 9, and the flat 5 is another alteration. So by playing this arpeggio over dominant 7, so over G7, I'm playing with a flat 7, which is part of the chord really, but also 2 alterations already, straight away. D flat, F, A flat. So this is a third, from D flat to F, the relationship is a third. A flat is a fifth of D flat, so this is literally D flat major. And again, in this case, I have a flat 9 alteration, a flat 5 alteration, and the flat 7 is still a flat 7, part of the chord. If we go with F, A flat, B, Now I have the third in the chord, the flat 7, and a single alteration, which is the flat 9. From F to A flat is a flat 3. From F to B is a flat 5. So this is also diminished. If we go A flat, B, E flat, now I have a flat 9, a third, and a flat 13, which we also tend to call this a sharp 5. When it comes to the chord, you might find dominant 7, sharp 5. That's the only reason I'm writing it that way. In this case, from A flat to B is a flat 3, and from A flat to E flat is a fifth, hence this is A flat minor. And now you can already see some connection. I have here B flat minor, and I have here A flat minor, which are a tone apart, obviously. And from the G perspective, this is literally a semitone above, and this is a tone and a half above. And I'll show you in a second what the kind of tricks I can use just based on that. And the A flat gives me the flat 9 alteration, the sharp 5, while the B flat is giving me the sharp 9 and the flat 5. So by combining those two, I'm getting basically everything minus the G. So these two triads combined gives me all the note of the vertical structure, basically all the notes of the scale too, minus the root note. If I keep going, now we have B, and from B to E flat is a major third, and from B to G is a sharp 5. So you have a B augmented. Last but not least, E flat, G, B. From E flat to G is a major third. From E flat to B flat is a fifth. So that's E flat major. And again, you can see I have a triad here, which gives me 2 alteration, the D flat. And a tone above it, I have another triad that gives me 2 alterations combined. So in that case, I'm combining these 3 notes, these notes plus this. The only note I'm not playing is the third. Let's have a look how this thing sounds. So if I have a G7, if I use A flat minor triad, which is this, and a B flat minor triad, combined, I already have 6 out of the 7 notes of the super Locrian scale. And the same thing can be said if I combine the D flat major triad, so you have this, and E flat. And of course, once you develop this across the neck, you can have some very interesting sound. Plus, if you know triads well, I mean, this can travel a long way. Then, as you've seen, you can use major triads, so basic triadic pairs, which is an argument we're going to touch upon at some point, and minor triads. Let's look at the extended triads now. So if I look now at 4 notes at a time, G, B flat, D flat, F obviously spells G half diminished. If we look at B flat, D flat, F, A flat, we are looking at B flat minor 7. And if we look at D flat, F, A flat, B, we look at D flat 7. F, A flat, B, E flat. Again, we are looking at half diminished. So you can see there is a lot of pairing we can do. Also here, 2 diminished, a tone apart, 2 minors, a tone apart, 2 major triads, a tone apart, and then you have an augmented. A flat, B, E flat, and then G. You're looking at A flat minor major 7. Then we have B, E flat, G, B flat, and what you have is a B major 7 sharp 5. Last but not least, E flat, G, B flat, D flat gives us E flat 7. And again, this is interesting because now I have two dominant 7 arpeggios. This one, which gives me flat 5, flat 9, I mean, just so basically two alterations and two notes which are within the chord, the third and the flat 7. And then I also have E flat 7, which gives me this note, including the E flat. So basically, we're combining 8 notes, and the overlap is basically the flat 5 between the two. Let's see what D flat 7 sounds like. So here we are using the cage system for this. So this is D flat 7. The chord again is G. Or we said we can use E flat 7. And of course we can combine the two. Now, once again, if I hear it in isolation over just a G7 kind of chord progression, we hear a lot of outside sounds, obviously, because there is like 4 alterations happening in this scale. It becomes interesting again, it's something definitely you want to practice the moment you apply it to a 5-1. So again, we're going to use, again, D flat 7 and maybe E flat 7, but this time resolving it into C major. And indeed, that is the best way to train your ears around this particular scale, because it's not an easy one to interiorize straight away because of all the alterations. Nevertheless, as time goes by, you're going to start, hearing them, and they're going to become part of your musicality. This concludes this particular lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you have any question, feel free to message me. It's been a pleasure. Until next time. Bye.